But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
July 20, 1969 is far more important in human history than anyone gives it credit. It is even more than the greatest achievement and the greatest adventure in human history, and it was certainly both. Even more fundamentally, I am proposing that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepping on the moon on July 20, 1969 amounts to an advance in human evolution, unlike any evolutionary advance that had ever taken place before. We usually think of human evolution taking place over millions of years, since we emerged from the depths of the primordial oceans as far less than humans. Then, over millions of years, Homo sapiens evolved, and that the shortest period in any evolutionary change up until now was measured in changes that took place over tens of thousands of years. I am proposing the radical idea that stepping on the moon, leaving this Earth for another body in the universe for the very first time, amounts to a powerful evolution of our human species. That evolving to the point that we took this unprecedented leap from the Earth is indeed evolution taking place in one particular moment at one special place. And also, just like other significant human evolutionary changes, their impact was not felt or seen when they first took place, but results over a far longer period of time. From this perspective, July 20, 1969 is just a moment ago. It is also reminiscent of the opening scene from Stanley Kubrick's classic 2001, A Space Odyssey, in which, for the first time, a pre-human primate discovers the use of tools, and in its excitement flings that bone into the air, and thousands of years later it magically becomes a spaceship on its way to the moon. So let me step back and look at this new one giant leap more closely in what it truly achieved already, much like that scene in 2001. Even before the landing on July 20, 1969, the U.S. space program generally, and Apollo specifically, as Charles Fishman explained so well in his epic book, One Giant Leap. The Apollo program, unlike any project since World War II, not only united the nation, but the Apollo program is responsible for the huge increase in science and engineering and advances in computer technology that would not have taken place in the way or at the pace they did except for the Apollo program. Taking a far longer perspective and addressing even more basic human drives, the comparison of July 20, 1969 with October 12, 1492, the first voyage of Christopher Columbus, is very, very real, powerfully instructive regarding the ultimate quest that motivated us to go to the moon, and as much instructive of the yet unrealized potential of the moon. Our desire to seek the unknown, to go where we have never gone before, is the story of the entire migration of humans that began long, long ago in the savannas of Africa and will never end. Specifically, whatever your personal views of the result of Columbus first stepping onto land in the New World might be, and regardless of all the bad that followed, at the same time, much, much more, October 12, 1492 was the beginning of the creation of the modern world and the reversal of the decline that had gripped European civilization. As the noted historian Alfred W. Crowley made crystal clear and states in his seminal work, The Columbian Exchange, until October 12, 1492, the New World and the Old World, for all intents and purposes, might have been on two separate planets. There was such a complete lack of contact between the two since they were separated eons before. But once they were joined, both the Old World and the New World were changed forever more, and one result, over 500 years later, was Apollo. Professor Crosby makes the case that October 12, 1492 was the most eventful day in all of human history, no matter one's politics. In this context, picture the Earth as the old world and the moon as the new. So that now, October 12, 1492 and July 20th, 1969 are the two most eventful specific dates in all of recorded human history. The very good news is, unlike the Americas, the moon currently is desolate. There are no peoples there to be displaced, abused, or enslaved. No environment to be devastated. What the moon is a place to be intelligently and imaginatively developed as no place on Earth ever has, and in so doing benefit Earth in ways that have never happened before. For us to develop the moon well and to human advantage will result, in fact, in what the Apollo program truly accomplished, as brilliantly explained in Charles Fishman's new book, One Giant Leap. But far, far, far more than the Apollo program ever did or could is what can and should happen next. Inventing, designing, creating new transportation systems to make travel to and from the moon as common and easy as traveling from New York to Europe today. And developing the moon will result in new materials and processes being invented here on Earth that never would have otherwise. And just as the result of Apollo, most of all, benefiting us here on Earth and in the United States. And it will be even more as we reach deeper and deeper onto the moon. But it is our human spirit and the future of America and the entire planetary community that will benefit most of all when finally young girls and boys grow up knowing they can realistically go to the moon to work and play when they grow up. As they watch from Earth, first hundreds, then thousands, and then tens of thousands of us venturing to the moon for many different reasons for varying lengths of time. And to build and do things on and above the moon, all over the moon, on both sides of the moon, that up until now are unimaginable. And with each passing year, more nations and nationalities will be represented on the moon. In so doing, it is inevitable we will see levels of cooperation and interaction among peoples from all over on the moon that earthly society has yet to experience on our own planet. The moon is our promised land if we make it so, and we must. Let us all keep something all important in mind about July 20, 1969, that cannot be noted too often. It was and is the first and only truly global event in all of human history. The attention and the awe, the images of Armstrong and Aldrin on the moon produced is unique in the entire span of human history. It was, in a very meaningful way, a global religious experience. That all by itself explains the unique power of the moon. That kind of experience will not be duplicated when humans first step on Mars or other planets, because the moon, unlike any other heavenly body, is very real to us. It is the earth, moon, and sun that are ever present to us, and it is only the moon, especially when it is full in the sky, that we can gaze at and almost touch. So that when we return, hopefully within the next few years, that awe that resulted on July 20th, 1969 will be reactivated in a new but equally powerful way. It will be even more real to us here on Earth because of the super high quality live video and audio now that we will watch on kinds of screens that did not exist back in 1969. But of even greater impact this time, we are going back to stay and do more than simply walk around and collect moon rocks to bring back to Earth. We will watch before our very eyes the beginning of a new civilization on the moon. The younger you are, the more you will witness of this process. And whether you yourself are ever blessed to walk on the moon, our ever more sophisticated technology will allow us to feel like we are there. My contributions to this discourse are the following. To my knowledge, no one else has suggested that on July 20th, 1969, we witnessed a major and very real step in human evolution taking place. Next, I am also an advocate of creating an international agreement that will allow for the ownership by individuals, ventures, and organizations limited acres of lunar land by meeting very specific requirements. The significance of this opportunity to own small amounts of lunar land will become a driving force in all kinds of lunar projects because of the simple fact, as proven on Earth, nothing has more power than owning the land on which we work and build. It will be no different on the moon. In fact, it is possible to project the value of an acre on the moon will far exceed the value of even the most valuable land on Earth. And that the owning, buying, and selling of land on the moon will become the most important asset of all, providing billions of dollars of lunar funding that will not exist otherwise. Next, even soon, in fact, right now, if it were up to me, the United States government would create a hybrid $100 billion convertible bond fund, backed by the full faith and credit of the United States, specifically to be used to fund a multitude of lunar ventures in the coming years. Keep in mind the extraordinary impact of a $100 billion lunar investment fund for new ventures will have in advancing projects on the moon. I believe such a bond offering would be immediately fully subscribed by purchasers from all over the world, and that over time many of these bonds will be converted into equity in the various lunar ventures that are funded and are successful. It should be named Hamilton Lunar Bonds in honor of Alexander Hamilton, who beginning back in 1789 was able to fund the needs of our new fragile government with bonds that sold briskly all over the world based on nothing more than the promise of the potential of the United States. What will happen from all of this and rapid development of the moon in many different ways over these next 50 years will be truly significant to our earthly society and economy, just as what resulted over hundreds of years following October 12, 1492. The moon will become the most powerful engine driving the global economy forward and making it much stronger, as the Americas did for the Old World following Columbus's first journey to that earlier New World. The other idea I want to offer here today is even far more expansive. It is built on these other themes, but carries them to a result that will dramatically change human history forever and for the much better. And in doing so, confirm my contention that July 20, 1969 must be viewed as a powerful step in human evolution, the only one that took place in front of our eyes in one place on one day in the entire span of human existence. Before I make this final point, I must include a brief prologue. In his new book, The Technology Trap, Carl Frey makes a basic point that goes beyond the specific issue of his subject, technology, to the much broader issue of change and the fear of change, taking his argument all the way back to antiquity. While the power elites in every society are often associated with change, they just as often are opposed and the protectors of the status quo. Because change means change that may upset the superior status they already possess over the rest of society. And this resistance can either be conscious and directed by them, but is often built into the very fabric of the society and does not require any kind of organized effort to prevent change from taking place. So, in the context of the here and now, and our failure to return to the moon in almost 50 years, there are many practical reasons or logical reasons that can be posited for our lack of return, or it might be a more core resistance to change. My belief is an ambitious return to the moon during the next 50 years that might have developed over the last 50 years, but it did not, will now have a revolutionary impact on human society far, far beyond whatever takes place on and around the moon these next 50 years. A level of change some might prefer not to see take place, maybe. That just as every one of the 12 Apollo astronauts who walked on the moon have all said in different ways and to various degrees, they each had what must be called a religious experience that altered the rest of their lives, and each of them clearly felt even more of themselves as planetary beings than also being proud Americans. I contend that this experience is not predicated on personally traveling to the moon. That as hundreds, then thousands return to Earth from the moon in the coming years, and tell all the rest of us of their religious experiences on the moon, they will in fact be missionaries for a new view of life on Earth. And in tandem with advanced audio and visual technologies and virtual reality, many of the rest of us will feel as though we too have stood on the moon with them and have similar experiences. But even more, the very simple fact that humans, no matter where on Earth we are, that night after night throughout our lives will look up at the bright shining orb we can almost touch, and will now touch with our minds, as we see in our minds and also physically see structures where there are thousands of other humans who are standing and working on the moon all the time. The impact will be profound beyond our current imagination. That this new reality will alter how our earthly religions process reality for their believers, and for the many, many more today that no longer have faith nor practice any of the existing religions. What will be taking place on the moon in the coming decades is the genesis of a new age, will become the 21st century religious experience, day after day, shared by many millions all across the earth. What will result from this powerful redefinition of how we view ourselves as humans and our view of others across the world, and how we respond to the earth we live on? The very experience the 12 Apollo astronauts who stood on the moon had, the entire earth is truly their home and our home. I can speculate more on what that will mean, but I won't. I will leave it to your imagination. I will conclude with the following idea about the 100th anniversary. I will not be here to witness it. Most of you will not be here. But many of those under 30 today will still be here, and even some of those over 30 today. For those who will be here to experience the 100th anniversary on July 20th, 2069, which should be a much grander celebration, if I am correct, it will be a far more powerful experience for everyone on Earth, and for the thousands of humans who will be on the moon on July 20th, 2069. On the night of July 20th, 2069, we will experience a new moon, which means the moon will be virtually invisible to those on Earth that night, which means the moon will still be brilliantly visible from the bright lights of hundreds of lunar bases and stations all over the visible side of the moon. And in addition, very likely, a spectacular light show beyond our current capabilities on the surface of the moon will be planned in celebration of the 100th anniversary. So the issue for us today, on July 20th, 2019, is, will we in the coming years display the kind of imagination and vision, especially as Americans, to realize the incredible potential the moon offers us over the next 50 years, or not? I choose to dream we will. I hope you do. If we all do, it will happen.
However, I think we're going to do it. And I think that we must pay what needs to be paid. I don't think we ought to waste any money, but I think we ought to do the job. And this will be done in the decade of the 60s. It may be done while some of you are still here at school at this college and university. It will be done during the terms of office of some of the people who sit here on this platform. But it will be done. And it will be done before the end of this decade. And I am delighted that this university is playing a part in putting a man on the moon as part of a great national effort of the United States of America. Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there, and new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you.